Hi, here we are again for part two of my video about how do you balance physical health care, your medical care journey, with your neural retraining journey. And this applies to people who haven't even started their neural retraining journey, in case that's you. So please stay tuned and check out video one if you haven't, because it really lays a lot of groundwork for why this is so important to balance both as you heal. So what I want to dive into in this video is, what to do when you have a symptom flare. This is actually so key to this balancing act that you're going to be doing as you're healing. When you have a symptom flare, what should you do? I talked in the last video about how you want to reinforce to your brain that you are actually safe, even though the symptom is present. And that doing so will put you in a more regulated state that is more likely to get that symptom to ease off. So as an example, my business partner, Patty, she suffered from chronic pain for a really long time. And it got really bad during a period of her life when she had a lot of stress and a lot of grief. And she rewired a lot of the stress patterning that she had, a lot of the losses and emotions that she was still carrying around those griefs. And as she did that, the pain went away. But today, what happens is she has no pain almost all the time, but occasionally, if she gets really stressed out, she'll get a little bit of that same pain back. And so this happened to her recently on vacation. While they were on vacation, she and her husband were talking about all the responsibilities that they would resume when they got home, and the amount of work that she normally deals with in her daily life caused her back to immediately go into spasms, which was painful, of course. And so all she did, because she's really experienced at this now and her brain responds very well to it, is she just laughed and she just went, oh, well, look at that. I guess my subconscious is telling me that that was stressful stuff to think about. And so as she just reinforced to herself through laughter that she was safe, the pain just boop, eased right off. The spasming totally stopped. It was gone in like 30 seconds. So that speaks to this point, which is that if you have a symptom flare, assume that it's from an emotional root. Always assume that first. Even if there's a physical trigger also present, address the emotional aspect first, or the stress aspect, because you have the most control over that. And because as you do this, you will find that a huge percentage of the time, the root actually was stress and emotions, and it wasn't the physical trigger after all. But we can actually get into a feedback loop where a physical trigger seems to be more problematic than it is. So let me give you an example of this. I dealt with mold illness and it got really severe several years ago. And one of the things that happened is I became exquisitely sensitive to mold and mycotoxins. And so even if I had a little exposure, like I walked into a moldy building for, 10, 15 seconds, I would have really intense symptoms that could go on for several days, actually. And unfortunately, after just a few of those experiences, I started to develop a big stress response to the idea of having a mold exposure because it was so debilitating. And so then as time went on, what would happen is I would start to expect or anticipate to have all those symptoms when I would go into a moldy place or get exposed to a moldy item or something like that. And that did not do me any favors. In fact, my reactions got worse and worse over that period of time while I wasn't addressing my stress reaction around it. So then what I started to do is when I would have an exposure, because they would happen pretty regularly, just involuntarily, just, oops, I accidentally went into a moldy place again. What I would do is I would go, okay, well, let's assume that the reaction is largely because of my stress response and my expectation around what's going to happen? And so I would redirect my attention to something that felt really good and really safe. And I would basically soothe my nervous system into a state of feeling calm and safe, even if there were symptoms already starting. And as I did that, I noticed that the symptom flares from mold exposures got less and less with each exposure until eventually they stopped. The dramatic reactions just stopped because I had a bunch of repetitions of teaching my subconscious it's actually okay to have a small exposure. And we're designed to have small exposures. We're not designed to live in it, but we're designed to have small exposures and to be okay with small exposures. And of course, I was before I was mold sick. So even if you have mold illness, you can get back to that place where you're not so reactive to it. Yeah, that was one of those cases where my emotions and stress around mold were feeding my physical reaction to it. My subconscious was going, oh my God, you're gonna die whenever I go into a moldy building. And that was absolutely not the case. But that stress reaction would then cause an increase in inflammation in my body, among many other physiological changes. And that is what would produce these really out of control symptoms. So if you address the emotional root first, so let's say, you're not aware of there being a physical trigger, but the symptoms are coming and you're just like, what is this about? The good thing to do is just to ask yourself, okay, has something happened in the last 24, 48 hours, or even in the last 10 seconds that felt stressful or made me emotionally upset? And sometimes it's just in here. Sometimes it's your own thoughts. You're going down a stressful spiral in your mind, and then boom, the symptoms start. That happens all the time with my clients. So ask yourself that first. And if you find something like, oh, yeah, that's right, I had a fight with my husband earlier today, and I still feel upset about it, boom, work on that first. And you will be shocked how many times that is the root of the symptom flare. If that doesn't work, and you try and the symptom doesn't decrease at all from using a neural retraining technique to address the stress or emotions, that's okay. Notice if you had some emotion come up about the fact that it didn't work, right? Did you get really disappointed? Did you get upset? Did you get mad, frustrated? Did you start to feel really helpless? Make sure you address that too before you move on. It's normal to feel that, but it's also normal to move through it and let it go. We don't want to stay in those emotional states because they're not a healing state. So if you didn't have success, then you can move on to explore whether there's something else you want to do to address it from a physical perspective. But if you did have success, let's say, it was pain and you got the pain to go down from an 8 to a 5, great. That means your brain is significantly involved in producing the pain. So keep it up. The next time you have a pain flare, do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again every time. Because what you will notice is if the pain is largely coming from your brain or whatever other symptom is, that symptom will start to come back less severely and less frequently over time. And this is exactly what we see in chronic pain all the time. And it can actually be sometimes a pretty fast journey. We have somebody in the program right now who's already reduced her chronic pain by 50% in the first month, and now is reducing it even further and coming off of her medication. So it can be a pretty amazingly fast journey if your brain is the primary root of the issue. So the reason you want to do this, always explore this if you can, is you will never know how much power you have over your body with your mind if you don't default to addressing that first, right? And of course, I don't just mean your thoughts. If you've watched my videos before, then your thoughts are just the tip of the iceberg. They're just a little piece of what your brain is doing that can create changes in your body. So for the most benefit, we actually need to shift what your subconscious mind is doing. And that's what all of our neural retraining tools allow you to do. Okay, so our final part of balancing the neural retraining journey with your medical journey is to have some conversations with your doctor about how they can help you with that. Tell them what your neural retraining goals are. Most doctors today will absolutely acknowledge the pivotal role that stress and emotions and trauma play in your health, right? They may not have the tools to really help you adequately address that. That's the most common scenario, but they will acknowledge that it's important, right? So if you just say, hey, I am working on getting my nervous system better regulated, reducing my stress reactions to things going on in my life, and I could really use your help with that because right now I'm still very dysregulated. I'm still in fight or flight a lot of the time, or I'm still in freeze and chronically fatigued all the time, or whatever. So right now I need to try to reduce both the stressors in my life, but also my reaction to them. So you can help me with reducing my stressors from a healthcare perspective. And then you may need to set some boundaries. And that is a very healthy thing to do that most doctors will also really respect. They just don't necessarily know what each individual patient in their practice needs as far as their boundaries. So the first thing that you can ask them to help you with is not ever talking to you catastrophically. You know, tell them that you want to know what is important for you to know, but it wouldn't benefit you to get really overwhelmed with doom and gloom, right? So it would be helpful if they could be realistic and not pessimistic. Keep the information more actionable. So as an example, instead of them saying, this could cause cancer and autoimmunity and all these other things, they can just say, hey, this issue can have serious consequences. So let's head those off by addressing it now. And here's what you can do to do that. Feels really different, doesn't it? You know, if you actually bring this up to a doctor, they'll probably very quickly realize, oh yeah, that makes sense. That that's a better for you for me to do it that way. But a lot of doctors have gotten into a bad pattern of trying to motivate people with doom and gloom. They think that in order to get the patient to actually take action, change their diet or address the mold in their home or whatever, they have to make it sound like it's the end of the world if they don't do it. But ultimately, what I see in my practice, because I'm dealing with all these really traumatized, dysregulated people, is that all of those kinds of conversations from their healthcare practitioners in the past have actually been traumatizing and have led to chronic dysregulation in their nervous system in regards to their health. So that's the first thing they can help you with. Another thing they can help you with is if you've had some bad reactions to previous treatments, let them know that and what they were and what happened for you, right? Because they can help you going forward by starting you at really low doses of anything to make sure that it's tolerated and then gradually working up on the dose. Many of my clients have felt very traumatized from some prior treatments they've tried that backfired horribly. Then of course they got really gun shy about wanting to try anything new or feeling safe to try anything new, right? And sometimes it's important that you try a different approach, but it's also important that you feel safe when you do that, right? So they can help you with that while you can work on rewiring the traumas from previous treatments that backfired for you. And then if you've been mistreated by a doctor in the past, like dismissed or put down or told off or told that you were making something up, let your doctor know about that medical trauma. They are not going to have the tools to help you really transform that trauma so that it isn't traumatic for you anymore. But they can help you by what I would suggest is just say, hey, even if what I have going on is really bizarre and like you don't know why it's happening, it doesn't make sense to you, the symptoms don't sound like anything you've heard before, I'd rather hear that you don't know what's going on, you don't have the answer, than to just be dismissed or put down or something like that. Some doctors are going to be able to hear that really easily and some are not, but hopefully yours is, because it's a absolute epidemic that we have in this country of people being traumatized by the medical system in that way. So again, I strongly suggest you take some responsibility for your own trauma as well and take that to neural retraining to be rewired, because your doctor can only do so much to help you to feel safe if what's going on in here does not feel safe, right? And I don't necessarily mean your thoughts, I mean even on a subconscious level. So you may be having an extreme body reaction telling you you're having a survival response in the presence of your doctor, and consciously you may think, why is my body doing that? I don't understand. I feel perfectly fine mentally. But that's because it's happening on a subconscious level. So that's still a trauma response and it still needs to be addressed. Okay, finally, if you are overwhelmed by your healthcare protocols, let your doctor know that. They can't help you to simplify if they don't know that it's too much for you, right? So sometimes you just have to speak up, and that's all they need. While you're neural retraining, you want to try to reduce your sources of overwhelm until you are better regulated. That's a really, really healthy thing to do. So let your doctor know how many supplements or medications you can handle at what one time, how many office visits per month or per couple of months that you can handle. If you can't really ever seem to remember or get really stressed out by dosing in the middle of the day or trying to dose between meals or things like that, let them know. Whatever it is that they're asking you to do, if it's stressing you out too much, for whatever reason, whether it's logistical reasons or financial reasons, or your family's not supporting it or whatever, let them know, because they may be able to help. As an example, if your doctor's like, hey, I'd really like you to eat keto for a while, or I'd really like you to eat paleo for a while, or some other thing like that for health reasons, low FODMAP, whatever. And you're just like, I just cannot find the time to cook that much or the energy. I'm just exhausted all the time and I'm overworked and I'm trying to take care of these 3 kids, blah, blah, blah. If that is what is going on, let them know. They can suggest a meal service that at the very least cooks 1 meal a day for you, so that there's one less meal that you have to worry about making for yourself. So there's a lot of little tips and tricks they might be able to help you with if they know. The other thing is, a lot of docs, when they first meet you, they'll do all this testing and they'll find all the things that are going wrong. And sometimes they'll want to address all of it at once because they're just trying to get you better as fast as they can. And I totally get that from a doctor's perspective. But from the patient perspective, addressing all of those things at once may be really overwhelming, and it actually may not work optimally. So ask them if they can address those issues in stages. Like, they can improve your diet first and then start detoxification and then start addressing infections that are present or microbiome imbalance and then tissue repair. Those things can happen sequentially. They don't need to happen all at the same time. And to some degree, they can't happen all at the same time. Like, you're not going to be able to heal your gut lining completely if you still have an ongoing infection in your digestive tract. So ask them if things can be done in stages, because a lot of times they can. So those are just a couple of tips that I have for you about how you can balance neural retraining with your medical care journey and how you can get your doctor to help you with that. But remember, there's only so much they can do as well to accommodate the stress and the overwhelm and trying to get you better on a physical level. So they may not be able to make it perfect for you, right? There's likely still going to be action you have to take. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be convenient, right? And so if you find yourself feeling very upset or annoyed or frustrated or depressed about the actions that you do need to take to get well, that's a really good thing to bring to neural retraining on a regular basis too. I can definitely say from my own health journey that I had a lot of emotional ups and downs during that journey, depending on how my symptoms were doing and what I was doing to try to improve my health. And so, like I mentioned in video 1, it's important to create balance between what you're doing for your health and things that you actually enjoy in your life, it's incredibly important that you make some space for those things. So if that means that you can only do the diet 80% of the time, maybe that's okay, right? Maybe that's going to be enough. So it's a case by case basis, but I would definitely say for everyone, please, please, please don't stop doing the things that you love in your life. And if you're finding yourself getting really upset about your healthcare journey and what's involved in that, use neural retraining tools to dissipate that stress, to dissipate that overwhelm, and to help yourself move through those emotional states that are normal to come up, but they're not healthy to get stuck in. And most people get stuck in them, and that's where you get the feedback loop going that's bad for your health. All right. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this video was helpful to you on your healing journey.